Well, should you move to the sticks? That's today's question and today's answer, or at least my opinion on the answer. We'll get to that in a minute. Welcome to Integrative Preparedness. Welcome to all the new people. It's good to have you. If you're with us over on the Patreon channel, make sure that you check the member post page regularly, meaning probably every day. There is such great stuff over there put up by our members, by our other patrons, and we have just an exceptional group over there with a very wide and deep knowledge base, and I learn a lot from that. And I've been doing this most of my life. And so can you. And they are a group that loves to teach and loves to share and loves to help and everything like that. If you are with us over there, if you're not with us over there, I would invite you over there. Just I put a lot of stuff on Patreon that I don't put on the YouTube channel for various reasons. I've explained it in the past, and I'm not going to get into it right now. This morning I just put up one on should you do a press check. Yesterday I think I put up one on am I moving to 10 millimeter from 45 ACP. If you're wondering, and if you don't know me, this comes not from reading magazines or talking to people at the gun counter, but from 49 years of carrying a gun professionally. And so I share my thoughts with you on that. And then the other day I put up some other stuff. I put preparing for a peaceful life. And the reason that I keep things like that over there is because so often people on YouTube, they want the exciting stuff. They want the world is crashing. They want the latest calamity. And while you certainly should be prepared for the coming calamities and catastrophes, and there are plenty on the horizon, you need to keep a peaceful center, so that you can navigate your preparedness activities, in a positive way and not out of fear. Anyway, let's get, and also one more thing. If for those of you who are with us on the Stonemont level and the Patreon site, I'll be reading the next chapter of my second book, The Revival, probably later today. I think we're up to chapter 10 in this. This is the second of my books, the Stonemont series, which are currently 6. So that's that. And on the Stonemont level, you can access the audibles, me reading the books on the Stonemont level. Okay, let's get to this question of should you move to the sticks, and that's under the assumption. Now, if you already live, sticks. I do not mean that in a derogatory manner at all. Okay, I love the country. My family. We've had farms in the family since since my family came over to the New World in the 1600s. And we have had farms in the Ozarks, ever since my family came up from Georgia, Tennessee, and South Carolina after that unfortunate little dust up in the 1860s. And so most of my family, have been farm people, rural people. So I do not at all disparage and I want to make this clear, I do not at all disparage the rural lifestyle. However, I do warn against, I won't say warn against some things, but I do, when people ask me the best place to live, I do pass on information. Now, I know there are a lot of people, well, maybe not a lot, but there are some people in the preparedness community that pretty much tell those of us who live in cities or suburbs that we're a bunch of idiots. We're foolish. We'd better get out of these death traps and things like that. And whatever. I am not going to say that. I'm not going to disparage those who live in the country, but I do want to pass on, because I know there are a lot of people out there who ask, should I move to the country or should I move to a small town? And the videos that I watched today give some very good examples of things you can expect in those situations. Okay. Now, the channel that I watched was the Prepared Homestead. I think that's it. Okay. Yes. It's a channel I like. I enjoy it. The guy's name is Travis. He's a thoughtful guy. He obviously cares very much about preparedness and about his audience, which is good. He's not just out there, trying to make a buck or whatever, but you can tell that he is he is sincere about his message and about wanting people to be prepared. Now, if now he lives rurally. I don't know him. I've never met him. I'd love to meet him sometime. He puts together monthly meetings, I think, and I've always meant to get down there, and I just never have. Busy, right? I know the county he lives in because I have friends in that county, and it's a beautiful area. It's a beautiful area of the Ozarks. But there are some things about it. He gave a couple of examples in his videos today. And I'm not going to try to get into detail. Go watch his channel and let him explain it. I'll try to get it as close as I can. One of the situations was that he went to town, and I guess it's quite a drive. Well, he had some truck trouble, and when you have vehicle trouble and you're a long ways from town, it can be a problem. More so than where I live, where I could, my mechanic's, a half a mile away, and I can call road service if I need to, and they can get it out there in a half an hour, whatever. But, when you live rurally, things are more difficult. They're simply more difficult because it takes, more time. It takes, better logistics, all of these things. He was, as a result of his preparedness, he had extra parts that he needed for his truck and took care of it. That's great. It's kind of tough to have all the spare parts that you might need. There's no way I'm going to have all the spare parts for all my vehicles, that my mechanic does or that he can get from Napa in a half an hour. And that's during good time. Now here, I do want to explain this, that after the big collapse, after the collapse about which my books are written, I don't have the first one. Well, it's the Stonemont series. You can find, the links are down below, Amazon, or you can get them directly through me, through our website, stonemont.us. It's the story of the collapse of the world as a result of a CME, and I pack those books with lessons on how to prepare for, how to survive a total collapse, and then, just as importantly, maybe more importantly, well, not more, because if you don't survive it, you can't get to this third step, how to rebuild afterwards. Okay. So I want to make clear here that in the event of a total collapse, yes, rural living can be much better. Well then, Steve, why do you live in the suburbs? Because we haven't had a collapse. But Steve, if it collapses, you'll never be able to get out of the suburbs because everybody from the city will come out and eat you. No, I talk about that. I've talked about this to great extent in previous videos. And I think people have, I think they have some wrong ideas about that. And I talk about it extensively in my books, exactly what I believe would happen as it comes to, with the inner city, the inner suburbs, the middle suburbs, the extra outer suburbs, the exurbs, and all of that. And again, this comes from my experience. I'm a big city guy. I was a big city cop. I know the city, and so many of the things, that are kind of promoted about dangers of cities and the golden hordes and all that are really promoted by people who don't have the extensive experience of city living or suburban living, and or others who simply repeat it because, the more something is said, the more people believe it, and then it becomes a truism as opposed to a truth. Everybody simply accepts it, and then if you say something different than that, people say, well, you don't know what you're talking about, because they've heard 1,000 people say this one thing, and then you come along and say something else that's totally different. You couldn't possibly know what you're talking about. There's a lot of that in the preparedness world. But anyway, getting back to Travis's experience, and then he went in, I guess he was going in to have some tires put on his truck. And while he was there, and I guess it's a combination, small towns have these kind of, a lot of things there, a feed store and tires and things like that. And a guy came running in, and his wife was having a cardiac arrest. And the luckily, Travis, who has experience, some medical experience, was there. Watch his video to get more information on that. And so they called 911, and I forget what he said. It took 45 minutes for the first ambulance to get there. And they were not in a hurry because they weren't aware that it was a heart situation. They just thought somebody passed out. They weren't in a hurry. These areas rely on volunteer ambulance, volunteer fire, volunteer, all this. And then once they got there and they were able to somewhat get her stabilized at least until Life Flight got there, which took forever. And hopefully the woman, I think he said the woman has pulled through. I don't remember, but hopefully she has, prayers for her. Excuse me while I take a sip out of my Stone Mountain mug. By the way, I think we're finally caught up. I think today we're sending out the last bunch of mug orders. We have just been snowed under. I apologize for people who have been waiting on these things, but we weren't ready for all the orders, to be real honest. And I have a surprise coming out. I was waiting until I get them all sent out before I bring on the next surprise. You all will want, excuse me, one more sip. So, these are the dangers, in the city. We found, and most of you know, I worked at a major hospital system for a long time, and we had a lot of life flights coming in. I was in the security department, and we had a lot of life flights coming in from the smaller areas, from the smaller towns. And I talked with, and I have some friends who are doctors and friends who are charge nurses and friends who are, the critical care nurses, the good friends. They're part of my group, my circle of friends. And I've discussed it with them, and there's, they say, they confirmed what I had thought. Let me put it that way. I try not to make medical, give medical opinions without, running it through them. Say, this is kind of what I think, and is that right or is it wrong? And they confirmed this. They said, and I asked them, I said, do you find that people who come in from smaller areas, rural areas or small towns, are usually in worse shape by the time they get to you? Everyone has said, absolutely, absolutely. That golden hour that they call it, whether it's after a stroke or after a heart situation, and then other situations. I mean, if it's traumatic injury, you can stabilize somebody for a while. I could tell you some horrible stories about people who did not make it, young people who did not make it after being life flighted in or brought by ambulance from a small town or a rural area, simply because time is a factor. Time is so important in these situations. So this was, it was a good example of what you need to think about if you are thinking about moving from a city to a more rural area. Now, here again, I'm going to say, I don't put down people at all who want to do that. And I've mentioned before that before the collapse, this is why living in a city or a suburbs can actually be safer than living more rurally or in a small town. And I know I get people just all upset at me for saying that, but it's the truth. I have experience in this, I know people don't want to admit that, but it's simply the truth. And because violent crime is not the only threat that we face, okay? Life is dangerous. That's why farming was for years and years considered the most dangerous occupation, distance from medical help, because farming, there's a lot of accidents, right? And more crime and drugs are moving into those areas. And it's not just medical, but as crime and drugs, I know drugs being part of crime, but it's not the only crime that's in these areas. A lot of the people move into these areas because of the less aggressive law enforcement. Okay, these counties, they simply don't have it. You got a big county with a sheriff's department and 8 deputies, and maybe 1 or 2 towns they're big enough to have a police department, which could be the chief, and maybe a volunteer guy or maybe a couple. Who knows? The law enforcement presence is so sparse in the local area, in the more rural areas, that it attracts the bad folks. Okay, there's a lot of places in the country that I don't want to go down that road. If you knew what was down that road, if you didn't have to go. The other thing that Travis brought up, this was in a second thing, was talking about the immigration and the threat that it poses, not just on our social services, but the crime. Let me back up. I think that he mainly was addressing the social services. I will address the crime. Because with mass immigration, you're not just getting the cream of the crop, okay? A lot of them are hard workers, a lot of them, whatever, but some aren't, and they pose a danger. And if they're in an area to where the law enforcement is not up to the task, they begin to present a threat to the local population. And it wouldn't take, as Travis said in his, you know, the federal government is dumping these people all over the place, and they could be, attracted to the smaller towns. I think that's a while before that's going to happen, but I think it's going to happen. And when that happens, it's just going to totally overload whatever social services there are. There are medical services, fire services, and certainly law enforcement services. And that becomes a threat to the local population. And don't, the locals can't expect help from the state on this. They're just not going to happen. And people who don't realize how this works, a county in Missouri, for instance, they might have one highway patrol trooper assigned to that county, or the one trooper might have 2 or 3 counties that he's responsible for. So you have a sheriff's department with a sheriff and 6 or 7 deputies, and a couple of small local police departments with 1 or 2 guys, and then 1 state trooper. And as problems increase, it quickly overcomes the ability of law enforcement to be able to respond in a way that is going to contain elevating problems, if that makes sense. Okay. Again, this comes from my experience. I've been a big city cop, a small town marshal, actually, yes, and a deputy sheriff, working both high crime inner city and county districts. So this comes from my experience, not something that I heard. The main thing that I want to talk about here, or that I'll close with this, is be aware if you're thinking about moving to a more rural or small town situation, things are going to be different. You're not going to have the same services. My daughter had a choking incident while I was at work years ago. The paramedics were here in 3 minutes. Okay. When you call for an ambulance around here, they are here within 5 minutes. Many of you know that I had a good friend of mine who almost died. Had the ambulance, had the paramedics gotten there 2 minutes later, he'd be dead. Minutes can count, and just like they say, when seconds count, the police are only minutes away. The same thing applies to fire and emergency medical services. That can mean the difference between life and death. And I won't claim that emergency services are great in every city. I'm sure they're not. I only know about where I live, and this is why I live here. They are exceptional. You need a cop, he's here. You need an ambulance, he's here. You need fire, they're here. I just saw something about a barn fire. Somebody lost $60,000, or was it $600,000? I don't know. It doesn't matter. It had a 6 in it. Barn fire. Okay. Well, you get a fire in rural areas, it's pretty much gone. Whether it's a barn, your house, whatever. Unless you can put it out, it's gone, because the emergency fire guys, they'd love to be able to put it out, but they're doing other things. Okay. They're volunteers. And a volunteer fireman, I don't mean to put them down, but they are the same as a volunteer law enforcement person. They don't have the experience. They may do some training, but they don't have the experience that allows them to be able to do things automatically, on time, exactly right. Okay. And this is where you want professionals, full-time professionals, when your life depends on it. Many times there's house fires around here, and they might have to do a little bit rebuilding in the attic or something like that, but the house is saved. And that's not so true. So anyway, what I wanted to just point out, because I think that Travis did a real good job explaining. He didn't say don't live out there. He's saying here's the things that are happening. Here's the things to expect, and I think that's exceptional. I did one, as a matter of fact. I'm going to have to reshoot it because I shot a video a month or so ago, driving back from Warsaw, Missouri, about living in the Ozarks, because I know that a lot of people, think about the Ozarks as a great destination for either bug out or, I should say this. If you live in the city or the suburbs, you need an alternative location to go to. That's for new people who haven't seen this channel before. I've talked about that extensively, about our plan to leave and where our alternate locations are, but this has gone long enough. I'm not going to get into that. So if you live in the city or suburbs, you need to have another location, more rural, to go to. But that's after a collapse. Okay. It's simply easier and safer in the suburbs while life is going on well. Now, how long that's going to be, I don't know. Could be 6 months. Could be 600 years. We don't know. We prepare for what could happen while not living in fear, okay? So I think I went off track there for just a second. But realize, my Ozark ones, yeah. I did a video giving the truth about moving to the Ozarks, and there are some truths in there that I think, and I got done and I was pleased with it, and it turned out there was no sound. I guess I hadn't pushed the little plug-in to my mic far enough, but I'll do it again here in a month or so when things settle down here. And it comes again from a guy whose family has lived in the Ozarks since the 1870s, late 1860s, okay? So yes, I do know what I'm talking about that, and I do want to share that with you, because the Ozarks is one of the several places people always think about as bugging out to or moving to, to be ready. Live at the place where you need to live, whether it's the Redoubt, whether it's the Ozarks. There's plenty of other places. There's other great places all over the country that are good for that. But I'll get back to that. I'll do one on the Ozarks when I get a chance. And there are a lot of things to keep in mind. There really are. So keep that in mind. And when you are deciding, do you want to move, and I called it the sticks just because I'll probably put that in the title. If you're thinking about moving to a more rural or small town area, first off, it takes a certain personality to do that. And many people just don't want to. Yeah, they just don't want to. I mean, I like the fact that I can go to Walmart 24 hours a day. And people will say, well, that means you don't plan very well. Yeah, I plan well. We wouldn't have to go anywhere, to be honest, if we didn't have to, but I like the ability to do it. I like to be able to run the Quick Trip if I feel like it 24 hours a day, things like that. Have choice of several big grocery stores, have my choice of restaurants. That's me. May not be you. And that's fine, but you have to find what's right for you. And that's important. If you're not the right personality to live in a small town or rural areas, you have to admit that. You have to live where it's right for you, and don't let people insult you for living where you want to live. I don't insult people for living where they want to live. There are good and bad in both. There are things that make things more difficult in some than others, and there are dangers in all areas. The dangers may be a little bit different. I don't worry about my tractor rolling over on top of me. I don't have a tractor. That's why. But for the guys who have tractors, they need to be careful, right? You guys can tell me. Tom Usher can tell us all about that over on the Patreon channel. So anyway, keep those things in mind. Keep those things in mind. You need to have a realistic understanding of the challenges wherever you decide to live. And don't make a decision spur of the moment and say, well, I think that'd be great. I'm going to move down there into the trees. And I have land in the Ozarks. It's one of our my brother and sister I own land in the Ozarks. It's one of the alternative locations that we have. Should we need to go there? Should whatever happen around here? But you know what? Until then, I don't need to. So anyway, go watch. Go watch. I will put it. I will hashtag it or whatever it is down here. Probably many of you already do watch him. Go watch Travis's. He makes excellent points, and he's a good channel. He's one of just a couple that I watch pretty much every time he comes out with something because I just like his manner. I like the way he talks about and things like that. He kind of talks about what's happening in the world and the importance of getting ready, and he's exactly right. So I'll hashtag that, but take it for what you will. Make sure that you do what's right for you, but make sure that you understand, the ramifications of your decisions. Make sure. Think twice, do once, right? Okay. You all have a good day. Remember that we prepare well today in order to live well tomorrow, and get out there and do something to prepare so you can live well tomorrow. And I'll probably talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.